But Drew Hernandez is a strong-minded individual.
Exposing lawlessness.
Drew Hernandez, who is ideological.
Finding the truth.
And use the word Antifa.
This is what they do.
Battling
They're
mainstream
liars. The woke mob, all they can do is lie.
These are the front lines.
How's it going, guys? Drew Hernandez here, host of Frontlines. I am here on the front lines in Eagle Pass, Texas. Now, obviously, I'm not literally on the southern border. We're continuing our southern border coverage for this entire week. Title 42 was going to be revoked, but it was stopped, so it's going to stay in place. And Title 42 is a President Trump-era policy that was meant to be put in place to stop the influx of migrants and illegals, because they blamed it on COVID, that possibly COVID could spread if millions of people are invading the United States of America. But obviously, that didn't stop the current administration, but they still wanted to take it away. It was stopped. It's still in place, but the crossings are still taking place. And you might wonder, Drew, what are you doing in front of this building with a giant bus? There's a school bus over here. It doesn't look like the southern border. Well, here's why this matters, okay? We're going to get to the entire process, but to give you a little bit of context of this show today, we are here in front of what's called a non-government organization. This is where the migrants are brought after they cross the southern border, after they're booked in a Border Patrol station, and then once they're done and processed at the Border Patrol station, they are then put on a non-government organization-owned bus, just like these ones right here. And from the Border Patrol station, after being processed, they're brought from there straight to a non-government organization like this building right behind me. This one is called Mission Border for Hope. A lot of these NGOs, they guise themselves in the name of Christian organizations or Catholic organizations, or they're just trying to help people that are desperate and in need. But this is where they bring them and they process them and send them somewhere in the United States. But before we get into that process, I want to show you how this does. Today, we documented the entire process from beginning to finish, and how this starts is at the southern border when the cartels take these people, they charge them, and they bring them across the Rio Grande River, and some of these people lose their lives. Here's some footage this morning of some of those illegals that came across the United States that were being processed to the by the Border Patrol to be brought to the Border Patrol station. Take a look. Under the bridge right here, where a bus just pulled up with vans packed with migrants. And we just spoke with the Border Patrol agents, and they're processing them here. They're going to take them to another area down the river to be processed. And they're not telling us whether they're going to be deported or kept in the United States. But based off of what we've seen multiple times, not only here in Texas, but in Arizona as well, these migrants are just getting a taxi into the United States of America. They most likely will not be deported. Depending on where they're from, Title 42 isn't targeting people from Guatemala or Honduras. If they're coming from Mexico and some other countries, they will be, but most likely these people are just hitching a ride free into the United States of America. This is happening like clockwork. If you notice the wristbands on their wrists, those are the specific markings from the cartel when they make their payments to make it over the border. So when they make it into the United States of America, the cartels on this side know who they technically belong to, if they need to make payments or if they owe money. It's all like Amazon. When you see these people that are sent over the southern border illegally into the United States, the Border Patrol essentially acts like an Uber service. They pick them up, they process them, they make them take their shoelaces off. If you see the wristbands, like I said in the video, that is how the cartel marks them, and they're shown how much money they may owe on one side of the border. When they get on the other side of the border, there's different cartels use different wristbands, but they're sent from the cartels over from Mexico into the United States, and the federal government is now mobilizing our Border Patrol. It's paid from our taxpayer money to pick them up illegally and send them to a processing facility. And before I get into that, I want you to see how dangerous they could actually get on the southern border in the Rio Grande River, because it looks like it could be innocent. Oh, it looks like a small river. I could easily swim across that. But just so you guys know, that's the same river where a National Guardsman literally lost his life a few weeks ago because he was trying to save illegals that should have never been there in the first place. And the individuals he was trying to save in that river actually turned out to be drug smugglers. People that were never meant to be there in the first place, that were actually criminals. Here's some footage earlier in that same river of the Border Patrol saving a migrant or an illegal in the river. Take a look. So there, he was in there for a while, and people were filming on both sides. People were kind of seeing what was going on. Finally, they picked him up in the boat, saved his life because he was drowning. These people could literally die. Many people have died. Women, children, men, Border Patrol agents, National Guardsmen. This river is claiming the lives of many people, and the current administration knows these things. They know these things, and these people are literally losing their lives. And if you could see right here, this video is very clear that these people are losing their lives, and the southern border is a very dangerous, not a safe place. And we can't sit here and think that the current administration doesn't know how bad this really is. Here's another video just to prove that. Take a look. So right now it looks like the Border Patrol just conducted a rescue mission right there. You can see them right here. This is the Rio Grande River here in Eagle Pass, Texas. He was in the middle, he was drowning, now he's on the boat. They picked him up because he almost died. And this has been happening here on the Rio Grande, where they're coming over this river. I mean, right now it looks like it's calm, but it's really not. The current's very strong. You get swept away, you can die, you can drown. Just a few miles from here is actually where the National Guardsman lost his life trying to save someone just like this. So it's a very dangerous situation where this is happening around the clock, and it's not a safe environment, but this administration has incentivized these people to do this, to risk their lives, put their lives on the line, while in the process, our own Americans, the National Guardsmen or the Border Patrol agents, they could lose their lives trying to save someone that shouldn't even be doing this. And there you have it. This isn't only happening in Eagle Pass. This is happening in Del Rio, the Del Rio sector, the Big Bend sector. When you go down to McAllen, Texas, it's the same situation. It's even worse in Arizona, Yuma, Arizona, and Tucson at the southern border. People are dying every single day on both sides. It is a horrific issue that's taking place, and we haven't even started to talk about the drug trafficking that's taking place, the gun trafficking that's taking place. All of these things that are happening at the southern border could be taken care of. This doesn't have to be this bad. It doesn't have to be so open. This could literally be solved if our administration, if our leadership would just simply handle what's taking place at the southern border, actually enforces our border laws, our international laws when it comes to our national sovereignty, but they're not doing that. And like we told you guys yesterday, that the UN actually helps these people get into this country by giving them pamphlets, giving them literature so that they could learn how to cross Mexico into the United States of America, what they need to do, do's and don'ts, and how to do this stuff. But that's the process when you see it at the Rio Grande River. It is a situation of life and death, and people are literally losing their lives. And the craziest part about this whole thing is, like I said, it's been incentivized. It's a situation that has been created. We've been calling it the border crisis for the past year and a half, but it is literally a strategic border crisis. And even the Border Patrol themselves, when you talk to these men down here, they are overwhelmed. They are outnumbered. They cannot manage the United States southern border wall with the amount of men that they have and the limited resources that they have. And the current administration knows this. They've been at this for decades. They know what it takes to secure the southern border, but they refuse to do it, and they let people die on both sides because this is all for what? A political agenda? They do this because they say that having a border is racist, that being national sovereign Americans is somehow racist, or if you want a wall, or if you want a fence at the southern border, that you're a white supremacist and you're a racist and you're just a bigot and a xenophobe and you hate anybody that's not white. Oh, but when it comes to Ukraine, oh, we could care about their sovereignty and we can care about them having a border. We could send tens of billions of dollars to secure their border. I'm literally here right now. It is not secure. It's not secure at all. On some spots, they have it on lock on both sides where the Mexican government is working alongside the United States government, the Border Patrol, to lock down some areas at the southern border so people don't die and cross in illegally. But that's not the entire southern border. Today is a bit of a slow day at the southern border, but it's going to continue to pick up because they know that media is down there. They know that there's cameras down there. They don't want people documenting what's happening. But every time there's a lack of media, that's when this stuff begins to start to pick up. When we showed up earlier and we started documenting those crossings or that migrant almost dying in the river, that's when things begin to pick up. But when they start to see more of a media presence or they start to see more in law enforcement presence, that's when they start to kind of back away. That's when they start to back down because they don't want any of this being seen. I mean, the Border Patrol agents don't want their faces shown on camera. That's why a lot of the times they'll cover up what they're doing. It's not because the Border Patrol doesn't want what's happening to be shown to the entire world. Sometimes they'll cover.
Okay, it's going.
What's going on, guys? Drew Hernandez here. We are here at an NGO, okay? So when they leave the Border Patrol station after they're processed, the federal government hands them over to the NGOs in these big white buses. So right here, there's about 4 of them, okay? There's probably hundreds of migrants in these 4 buses in total. They get dropped off right here in this building. They get their papers or whatever they need in the United States. If they need a flight or if they need somewhere to go, here are some people right here that look like they're just getting picked up. What's up, guys? Did you just cross over? Yeah, see, so people are, see, they got their papers right here. I don't know where this guy's taking these people, but they got their papers. They give them their papers and their packets, and they come straight from the border. I don't know if this guy works for the NGO, but I mean, there's a license plate right there. Yeah, so not only are they using the buses, like they're using people like this to literally just pick people up. Here are 4 buses, there's more people waiting. These NGOs, they get federal grants from the federal government. They're all funded with taxpayer money. You're basically paying for these people to come into the United States freely. Here's another one of the buses. So here they are, they're processing them. It's called Mission for Border Hope. A lot of them guise themselves as like Christian Catholic organizations. Here's the bus trying to come in right now. So here they are, they're going to be processed. There they are going in the building. This is like clockwork. Literally like clockwork by the hour. A lot of people, they're all about to come out right now. What's interesting about this as well is when you talk to Border Patrol agents, a lot of them will openly tell you that they have no way of accurately identifying if these people are actually families or not. When you see some of these people with children, it's not 100% a fact that they're actually families, even some of the men. And they're just coming and coming and coming. straight into the United States off of your money. You see the bags? Those bags are what the NGO gives them. And here, like clockwork, look, here's another bus. So when the next group comes out of the building, they're going to be put on this bus, and off they go into the United States. All right, here we are, and what you guys just saw, literally, okay? That is the process. That is the end of the process. When the cartels send them over, the Border Patrol takes them in, they send them to the Border Patrol station, okay? And then they're sent to the NGO, all that footage you just saw. So from the Border Patrol station, they're sent to the NGO right behind me. All that footage you literally just saw, we were asking them, where are you going? They're all saying Miami, 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 California, Alaska, Dallas, San Antonio. They are all getting their one-way tickets in that building right behind me. When we come back, I'll explain more, so stay with us.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now, more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies who fight for our rights and our beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to our causes, and with your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Welcome back. I am still here, Drew Hernandez in Eagle Pass, Texas, in front of this NGO that is literally taking illegals and sending them into the United States of America with your taxpayer money. They got a bus right here, actually. They got a van right here filled with them. Notice how it says First Baptist Church, Mason, Texas. Okay? Like I said, they literally hide under the name of Christ, religion, Catholicism, the church, and they try and say we're doing the world a service. We're trying to help people, and here we are. Here are some more coming out that are about to be transported into this bus. Notice they have little children, some of them men, some of them are coming out that are about to be put on a bus right now. They're probably just going to continue to process, but like I said, this is just the continued process of what they've been doing all day. This happens every single day. People need to understand that this is systemic. This is planned. It's not just happening by chance. But these non-government organizations, these nonprofits, they hide under the word church, or they hide under the word religion, or they're doing humanitarian work, but they're literally legalized human smuggling operations. And the current administration has incentivized it and is funding it. These NGOs, they get federal grants. That's how they get the money to do this stuff. Look at these buses. Do you think anyone could just afford something like this? The grants that they get from the federal government are funding all of this right now. These people that are coming into the country illegally, they're paid. The Border Patrol gets paid to be an Uber service to bring them in, to bring them to the processing station. And then also the federal grants pay for these buses as well, and these NGOs. And it's just around we go. They're just doing this every single day, and they're using my money. They're using your money to do this every single day, and it never freaking ends. Now, get this, okay? So yesterday, we did do some coverage. I did talk to someone on the southern border yesterday. She's a landowner, and she said some pretty interesting statements. I asked her how she felt about literally her backyard being invaded on a daily basis. This is what she had to say. Take a look. I'm here on the front lines on the southern border, Eagle Pass, Texas. This is one of the most high traffic zones where the cartels and the human smugglers are sending the migrants and the illegals over into the United States. I am here with
Magali Urbina.
She's actually a landowner on the opposite side, in the U.S. side, and you have been seeing a lot of traffic. Can you tell us what you've been seeing this past year, these past couple months?
In the past year, I've seen the groups of over 100 to 200 people crossing, almost on a daily basis.
Wow, that's incredible. So how has this affected you? Your land? Is it business? Is it home? How is this affecting your livelihood?
Well, I mean, as you can see, there's a lot going on right now. So I feel kind of like if I'm watching we call it a novela in Spanish, it's like, is this really happening? But unfortunately, it is happening. And for the land, well, our pecan orchard is on that side, and we have this fence that now, our workers can actually irrigate 24 hours a day and spray chemicals, pesticides, without the migrants coming across and getting hurt.
Yeah, so when they are coming across, I mean, obviously it's a little slow right now because the National Guard's out here, the governor was here, so everything's kind of shut down. What would we be seeing right now, and is it like affecting your business? Obviously, do they affect the agriculture and what you guys are trying to do here?
Not us. They don't affect us because we have trees. But I have heard from ranchers that it does affect them because they do cut up their fence and they have cattle and the cattle gets out. So for them, it is a lot more expensive and more of a hassle for them.
Yeah, I know when we first walked up, I know you were a little like, who are you? Who are these
yes,
people?
I'd like
Let me
to
see
know
your...
who's here, yes.
Okay, what can you explain to us why you're kind of on edge like that?
Because of liability. Anything can happen to anyone out here. You do not know the land. And, like I said, safety for me is most important for everyone out here. We don't want anyone to get hurt, and there have been some pretty bad accidents and some fatalities.
Gotcha. So do you ever worry about like the cartels like kind of on this side doing whatever they're doing? Does it bother you if they're on this side doing whatever they're doing? Does anything like that ever happen?
No, I have never seen someone from the cartel. They're not going to be here. They're probably going to be back in that neighborhood behind us.
In the United States?
In the United States, yes.
Gotcha. Lastly, I mean, this has been happening, for decades, but it's gotten worse.
Yes, it has.
2021, the new administration, worse now, 2022. What would your message be to the current administration that is, I literally was in the press conference with Governor Greg Abbott, and I asked him directly, have you heard from President Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris? He said no. They haven't reached out to me at all. How does that affect you? Don't you want this fixed? What's your message to the administration that's doing nothing?
I don't think anyone has done anything. I don't think they're going to fix it. I think it's too big, or maybe they really just don't care and they tell us all what we want to hear. I don't know. I really don't know. The Biden administration is here for another, 2-3 years, and then they might stay, or we might have somebody else, and I don't think they're going to fix it.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to stay here. We're going to continue to talk to more people for the next few days, people that are living here, reporters, journalists, people that are on the ground, to continue to show you guys what's happening. Drew Hernandez, Frontlines. Stay tuned. Well, there you have it. It's affecting the surrounding community. That's pretty friggin' obvious, isn't it? I don't have to tell you that. I don't even have to show you that. Anyone with a sane thinking, simple mind could calculate that, yeah, the surrounding communities are going to be impacted negatively as well, especially landowners. But speaking of the community, yesterday, Governor Greg Abbott came to the Eagle Pass City Hall, and he did have a press conference. And take a look at a couple of things that he said. Yesterday, he did say that this is a battle against the cartels. Take a look.
Battle that's going on with the cartels, where we as a state are increasing our efforts to work with the local communities to make sure that we will thwart the cartel's goals to get more people coming across the border.
And it seems the governor is also aware that he said around 100,000 illegals are staged in Mexico that were waiting for Title 42 to be lifted, but there's still obviously a lot of people on the other side ready to come in. Take a look.
And that is, there are maybe as many as 100,000 migrants who are across the border waiting to cross into the state of Texas.
Well, there you have it. And also, I got to ask him a question directly. I wanted to know, has this administration or this president reached out to you at all? Take a look at his answer. Have you heard anything from President Biden? Have you heard a word from President Biden? Has he reached out to you at all? Has this failed administration reached out to you to help this community or anybody? Have you heard anything from this failed president?
President Biden has never once even tried to contact me about the border. The czar for the border, Kamala Harris, has never once tried to contact me. My last contact with Secretary Mayorkas was something like in February a year ago. They have no interest in talking to Texas or talking to leaders who are actually on the border. And remember, Joe Biden himself has never even been to the border. We are dealing with a crisis that is man-made by President Biden, who doesn't want to take the time to even come to the border or talk to the governor of a border state.
And you might be asking, why don't they send them back? Part of the reason is because they don't have to, because the current administration has allowed them to come into the country on asylum purposes. If they're Mexican, they get deported. I think if they're Cuban, they get deported, but not from Guatemala, not from Honduras, not these other Latin American countries where they're coming by the hundreds of thousands, literally on a daily basis. They keep them in the country because we have an administration that feels bad for these people, but they're the ones who incentivized and dog whistled for them to come and risk being killed, murdered, kidnapped, or raped to come into this country. That's who these people are. They don't care about these migrants. They don't care about these illegals. They don't care about their babies. They don't care about their families or women being raped, because if they actually cared, they wouldn't dog whistle for them to come into the country and risk everything, even their own lives. Does anybody actually believe that? Because I definitely don't. These people are liars. This is how bad this really is, and it's not getting any better. It's only getting worse because this is literally an agenda that they're allowing to continue. And here's a couple that are literally just walking out right now. These are migrants. These are illegals walking out of this NGO. And this guy's probably just going to take them somewhere. And this is not, the government is not even like overseeing this. They're just trusting the NGO to do this. You're watching illegals walk out of this NGO and literally just walk out onto the street. Quite literally walk out onto the street. We have no idea who these people are. We have no idea what their criminal record is. We have no idea if they've raped women. We have no idea if they've raped little boys, we don't know what these people have done. And they get brought to this NGO and literally released out onto the streets. You're watching it happen literally in real time. This isn't actually the southern border where we are. Like I said, we're in this border town here in Eagle Pass where they get brought here and literally released out onto the streets. Like, I don't know how much more we can make this clear. Not only are they taking them into these NGOs and putting them on buses, they just let these men, that's not a woman, that's not a child, that is a grown man that they just let out onto the streets here in the United States of America. Grown men that they're letting out. But they want you to believe that this is not happening. They want you to believe that this is somehow some kind of crisis that's just happening by coincidence, and we need to help these people because they're suffering from persecution and they're real asylum seekers. No, the administration dog whistled for these people to come. We have no idea if those two men that you just saw walk out of this building, we have no idea who they are, what their track record is, and even the Border Patrol doesn't have the best of the ability to document who is who. We don't know who these people. If those two guys were actual murderers or rapists and they don't have a track record in the system, the Border Patrol has no idea who they are, and you literally just watch them walk onto your streets in the United States of America. That's how it works. That's the process. It is a strategic crisis that is being done and that is happening in your country. It can be solved, but they don't want to solve it. They don't want to stop it because that's racist, that's xenophobic, and if we stop grown men like that without a track record, that's racist and xenophobic. Well, my name is Drew Hernandez. These are the front lines. We're going to continue here at the southern border exposing this. I'll see you tomorrow. See you later.
and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily, powered by Turning Point USA. We are coming to you live from the World Economic Forum here in Switzerland. Today is May 24th, 2022, Anno Domini. Today's top headlines, of course, we have to talk about me and the crew here getting detained by the World Economic Forum police. We'll break that all down next. A day two recap. What's going on at the World Economic Forum, and why is it that Bill Gates is talking about the next pandemic? Third, out of the National Pulse, the Wuhan lab apparently assembled monkeypox strains using methods flagged for creating contagious pathogens. And finally, President Biden saying that the United States will go to war with China in order to defend Taiwan in an invasion scenario. All this and more ahead, Human Events Daily.
That apparently the World Economic Forum under Klaus Schwab has its own military, paramilitary police force called the World Economic Forum Police. Suddenly, two minivans full of officers, essentially a quick reaction force, pop up. Everybody storms out. They've got MP5s. One of the guys was flagging me with his MP5. You know, kind of that means in the military, it's like, you know, putting his barrel where he shouldn't be vis-a-vis our direction. And then each of us was taken, myself and the entire crew, one by one, out, sort of behind the building and behind this stack of tables. And we were made to empty our pockets, and we were frisked right there in front of the entire attendees of the World Economic Forum.
So we got detained by the World Economic Forum police. I didn't even know there was such a thing as the World Economic Forum police. I don't think anybody knew this. But you know what? We found out. We broke the story the hard way. Yeah, that's right. Broke the story the hard way by essentially being there. Let me explain what happened, all right? I've told the story. I've done a lot of media already, but I have to explain it, of course, to the Human Events Daily audience. We were filming live hits yesterday on the side of the road outside of the World Economic Forum conference in Davos. We filmed the entire podcast yesterday there from the side of the road. We continue to do some live hits. I did Steve Bannon's War Room, did some other shows, sitting right there. No harm, no foul, right? No big deal. A couple of plainclothes officers came up to us at one point and said, hey, can I check your guys' passports? Can I check your press credentials? Sure, no problem. Here you go. Hand them over to him, said, no big deal, check it out. Make sure everything's above board. Because, you know, we've got our equipment out, we've got our cameras and everything. Secure event, totally understand. No problem, show the guy our stuff. About an hour goes by. We finish filming. We're taking a break. We're about to move to another location because we had found a higher location to look down on the city, get some more shots up there, you know, show people a different side of Davos. It's basically what you want to do when you're filming, right? You don't want the same shot, static background. It starts to look boring unless you're doing a news show like this, in which case it's normal. As we're charging our equipment and the crew's getting a little something to eat, two paddy wagons full of these armed officers drive up to us like a quick response force, stop their cars, they file out, surround us with MP5s, 9mm MP5s. One guy who was standing close to me was flagging me with his barrel constantly while he was standing there. Asked him to stop, you know, he finally pointed it down. And they said, again, who are you? We need to check your passports, we need to check your papers. And we're all sort of looking at each other saying, wait a minute, you know, we already talked to officers. We've gone through all this. We've done this rigmarole. Why are we doing it again? So they come back. Now they're asking us to check our bags. Now they're going through our stuff. They took us behind the building, behind a stack of tables, and individually they frisked us. That's right. Everything out of your pockets, up and down the arm, up and down your sleeve, hand down your pants in the front, hand down your pants in the back. To every single member of the crew and myself. And by the way, I was wearing my undertack when it happened. So if you were going to get frisked at the World Economic Forum by the World Economic Forum police, you want to be comfortable, you want to be wearing your undertack. But seriously, folks, this is why the First Amendment, freedom of speech, matters so much. We have it in the United States, we take it for granted. Here in Switzerland and Europe, they don't have freedom of speech. They don't have the First Amendment. They don't have freedom of the press. So eventually, this is all going on. Now, Tanya and my brother were over at the Ukraine house. They're hanging out, by the way, with Liev Schreiber because he was going to give a speech, and they were looking to see if Malcolm Nance was around. So they're over with Liev Schreiber, and Tanya's taking pictures with Ray Donovan. And I'm not sure if he set up the whole thing. This might have been a Ray Donovan, Tanya thing that he set up so he could spend more time with her. I don't know. They come over. Finally, I text them. I say, guys, you got to get here. Run as fast as you can. They're coming over. My brother shows up. He's taking footage. Then Tanya comes by with who? None other than Savannah Hernandez, the great journalist. She comes over. She starts filming, confronting the officers, confronting the detective. They stand down. They run away. They didn't want to make it a bigger thing, but it is a big thing. You detain people for reporting on your event. You detained us even though we gave you all of our information multiple times. I'm dressed like a reporter. You know what I'm doing. But what they don't want is anyone exposing their agenda and exposing what they stand for by reporting on them critically.
We are finding ourselves in a place where we have increasing polarization everywhere, and everything feels binary when it doesn't need to be. So I think we're going to have to think about a recalibration of a whole range of human rights that are playing out online, you know, from freedom of speech to the freedom to, you know, to be free from online violence, or the right of data protection to the right to child dignity.
Well, day 2 of the World Economic Forum just ended, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot to get through, so let's pack it all into one action-packed segment here. So other than myself, who they tried to get rid of, and by the way, Klaus Schwab, a message for you directly. I'm not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. Turning Point USA and Human Events Daily are here to stay. We are going to continue to report on this, and we're going to go to Geneva and we're going to report on the World Health Organization and their pandemic treaty and these international regulations. We're going to report on all of it. We're not leaving. We're not standing down, no matter what jackboot thugs you want to send our way. But what do we hear? Well, we heard this Aussie commissioner saying freedom of speech needs a recalculation. This is the e-safety commissioner. By the way, the e-safety commissioner, right? Electronic safety, right? That you'd think that has to do with like passwords or your bank account or something. No. She's saying freedom of speech needs a recalibration. We just need the government to come in and, you know, kind of tell us what our speech should be. And this is the exact same thing as Nina Yankovic and that Disinformation Governance Board were last week. What were they? They were options for the US government to come in and shut down our freedom of speech. That's number one, not gonna happen. Number two, Bill Gates. Bill Gates out there today talking about the next pandemic. What's our response going to be to the next pandemic? That's great, Bill. I really appreciate it. You know, I know that Bill Gates isn't a scientist or a doctor or have any medical background whatsoever, but for some reason, he's the boss of pandemics. And he's announcing now that we're getting ready for the next one. How wonderful. I wonder if it's monkeypox. And I gotta tell you something. Honestly, I really don't have time for monkeypox. I don't have time for it. It's like, if we just ignore these people, I really think this, if we just ignore these people and continue doing other things, they will go away. But third, and this was most interesting, Dr. Henry Kissinger gave a speech last night at the World Economic Forum. He said something very different than everyone else did when talking about the topic of the war in Ukraine. And what did he say? So we had gone through the Ukraine House, we had gone through the Russia War Crimes House, saw President Zelensky's speech, his Q&A with Klaus Schwab, completely funded, by the way, by Victor Pinchuk, that no one else was talking about. But I said something on the show yesterday where I said you didn't hear them ever say the word peace. You didn't hear one person ever talk about the word peace. And I've told you before that I put this into two buckets. There's the escalators and the de-escalators. Who is escalating the conflict and who is trying to de-escalate? Well, lo and behold, Dr. Henry Kissinger came out to the World Economic Forum, to the global elites of the West, and said it's time to start de-escalating. What did he call for? He called for a negotiated peace. And he even said, up to the point where Ukraine may have to cede territory. Now, it seems as though he was referring to Crimea and the Donbass, those two areas that Russia annexed Crimea back in 2014. The people there are largely Russian speaking. And then in Donbass, that's where the current fighting is as it stands right now. He said a protracted conflict would be disastrous for the West, number one. And number two, he also pointed out that Russia maintains a balance of power with Europe, within Europe, and that he said that you cannot drive Russia and China into a permanent alliance. Well, that's what Human Events Daily has been saying since day one. From day one. But if you said that publicly, you would be labeled as a Putin puppet. You'd be labeled as a traitor, someone who doesn't care, right? No. We're looking at the big picture of geopolitics and trying to understand things from a strategic standpoint. We're having an adult conversation. So now you've got two outlets. Dr. Henry Kissinger at the World Economic Forum, and you've got the New York Times editorial board just a couple of weeks ago came out and said the exact same thing. They said Ukraine should be suing for peace, even if it means asking hard questions, right? What are those hard questions? Obviously, they're also implying this situation, the status of Crimea and the Donbass. We want peace. We want to end the fighting. We want to end the bloodshed. Seek peace, not war.
COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. If we want to stop this epidemic, we need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin.
So monkeypox, we've been talking about this, it's been hitting the headlines. Like I said before, right, I think if we stop talking about these people, they'll just go away. But here's an interesting story from my great friend Natalie Winters, the great journalist Natalie Winters, as well as my friend, from the National Pulse. The Wuhan Institute of Virology, you remember those guys, right? Those cats and dogs. The Wuhan Institute of Virology assembled a monkeypox virus genome, allowing viruses to be identified through PCR tests using a method that had been potentially flagged as a contagious pathogen. That's interesting. What's also interesting is that this seems to have taken up months before, yes, that's right, before these initial cases were found in February of 2022. The paper was authored by 9 Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers and published in the lab's quarterly scientific journal Virologica Sinica, which follows the wide-scale use of polymerase PCR tests to identify COVID-19 positive individuals. Researchers appeared to identify a portion of the monkeypox virus genome enabling PCR tests to identify the virus in the paper. They go in through it, and they actually go through, and in the article itself, they're printing. You can pull up the whole. They have the whole thing up, and they're scribbled. You can get the entire genome of monkeypox in here. So, of course, the unearthed study follows the Wuhan Institute of Virology conducting similar research into strains of bat coronaviruses that could infect humans while admitting its facilities lacked proper laboratory safety protocols. So the question, of course, becomes, now I think with a few of these things, right, you've got to ask now, when it comes to the lab, can we co-locate the origin of monkeypox? Do we know if monkeypox first broke out anywhere near Wuhan? See, this was the thing with the Wuhan lab leak theory, because it wasn't just that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was conducting these experiments. See, people always say that, oh, you present this with no evidence. You present this with no evidence. Just because they were doing experiments doesn't mean that it led to the outbreak. No, that's not what happened first. What happened first was there was an outbreak of COVID-19 in the city of Wuhan, directly there. And at first they said it might have been some kind of bat soup thing. Then they said that it might have something to do with a wet market. No, it had nothing to do with a wet market. This was something that was being done in that lab. And now we see increasingly that it leaked out. And how do we know this? Because there's no other location. There's also been no animals found that have this pass-through species. Who is the pass-through species? How did it get from bats to one other species to humans? Well, you know what a lot of people have come in and found? That it looks like the pass-through species were the humanized mice within the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Those were the mice that had been modified. Look, I still remember this stuff, right? It was the ACE ACE2 receptors. They were given humanized ACE2 receptors so that when they were injected with the spike protein, it would enable the spike protein to infect them directly. The question then becomes, did that new virus that was created through gain of function somehow leak out? This is called gain of function, by the way. You are humanizing the mice. You're giving them, in order to make the virus gain some kind of function. So it's the virus gaining a function. That's what gain of function means, right? Now, we talk about this all the time. We don't always explain what it means. That's gain of function. So the virus has now gained this function with the spike protein to be able to infect the ACE2 receptors. Specifically, seemingly, right? Gotta use all the caveat words, seemingly specifically modified to be able to infect the human ACE2 receptors. The question then is, did one of these mice get sick? Did something happen? Did it leak out? We don't know because they've never released the full data from these trials. They won't even tell us about any trials they might have been doing that weren't even up on their database. The Wuhan Institute of Virology is a black hole. And apparently, according to Natalie Winters, they were doing research into monkeypox as well. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't that warm the coggles of your heart? I said it before, I'll say it again. Raid the Wuhan lab. Send intel in there.
Very quickly, you didn't want to get involved in the Ukraine conflict militarily for obvious reasons. Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made. That's the commitment we made. We are not, look, here's the situation. We agree with a one China policy. We signed on to it and all the attendant agreements made from there. But the idea that it can be taken by force, just taken by force, is just not appropriate. It will dislocate the entire region and be another action similar to what happened in Ukraine. And so it's a burden that is even stronger.
So there was President Biden. Now, not only do we have U.S. supplies and U.S. forces being committed in Ukraine, in the theater of Eurasia in Eastern Europe, but we're also seeing now that he's decided he's going to be committing U.S. forces into a war with China. I've said so many times, the way to prevent China from taking Taiwan, I went on Congressman Dan Crenshaw's podcast and talked about this. It's very simple. It's deterrence. You need to fix the Navy and you need to fix the country. Fix our Navy, get the crazy woke crap out of there, and focus on being a blue, lean, mean fighting machine on the 7 seas. The entire 7th Fleet needs to be revamped. You need to go in there and you need to kick out every single commander from, for the 07s and up to the 06s and down. That has anything to do with CRT, with wokeness, with all these crazy standards and crazy trainings that have nothing to do with being in the fight. The motto of INDOPACOM, right? So INDOPACOM is the command that controls 7th Fleet. That's your DoD component command. You need to be there actually ready to fight because you need to show strength. If you don't show strength, you show weakness. The United States looks incredibly weak right now. If you were China and you were looking at Taiwan, why would you not want to strike right now if you were the CCP? And by the way, I've been at the WEF for the last 2 days. And you know what I haven't heard? I've heard everybody talking about Ukraine, but I haven't heard a single person mention Taiwan. The whole CCP is crawling over the entire forum. Not a single person will talk about Taiwan. Why? Well, you've heard why. They know the CCP is coming. But Biden apparently hasn't gotten the memo. So he's going to turn around and say, the US will go to war with China. No, it's as simple as this. You're supposed to seek strategic ambiguity, but you can't have ambiguity when your president is a puppet, like in a bad remake or a bootleg version of Weekend at Bernie's. This guy doesn't know if he's coming or going. He doesn't know what time of day it is, and he certainly doesn't know what part in the movie it is. Our system is crumbling. Our dollar is down, our economy is cracking at the seams, our stock markets are down. We're sending $40 billion, printing that money, by the way, over to the killing fields of Eurasia. You're not suing for peace, as Kissinger and the New York Times are now calling for. Instead, you're trying to exacerbate another war in a complete other theater. How many times do we have to impeach this president? How many articles of impeachment are there actually going to be? Because it seems like he's doing everything he can to exacerbate problems on the world stage rather than actually seek peace. It's as simple as that. And we used to have a president who understood what peace meant. And that is all the time we have for you here, Human Events Daily, reporting live from the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. Remember, our promise, our oath, our solemn vow to you: be good, be brief, be gone. Your homework for us: share this out with just one of your normie friends, and then leave us your 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever it is that you get your podcasts. What did we talk about today? Well, of course, we talked about myself and the crew being detained by World Economic Forum police. We're not really sure who those police are. Are they local police that are tasked to the World Economic Forum? Where do they get their MP5s? Why did they tell us to delete footage? We didn't delete any of the footage, by the way. In fact, we've got more footage of that's going to be coming out. Next, day 2 recap of the World Economic Forum. We spoke about everything that's happening, including Bill Gates talking about the next pandemic, and very interestingly, Dr. Henry Kissinger talking about suing for peace in Ukraine, even if it means ceding territory. Third, the Wuhan lab. What was their involvement with monkeypox? Were they involved in it? Were they doing anything? And then finally, President Biden talking about the U.S. going to war with China over Taiwan. This idiot has no idea what he's doing. He has no business being government, and he certainly has no business being president. But before we go, it's time for today's history break. Today, May 24th, all the way back 1844, the inventor of the telegraph, Samuel Morse, sent the first official telegraph message from the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. to Baltimore. What hath God wrought? That was from the Capitol building to Washington, D.C. to Baltimore. And I'm here in Switzerland, beaming this out across the entire world. As Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?